We on the streets in the war zones, pushing this truth until we get called home. I got brothers I could fall on. Any situation, brothers I could call on. All we gotta do is log on. Send a chain message, seeing if the God's home. Our brother need help now. No matter what it is, we deny self now. Nobody getting let down. For the most high, we gotta put our best down. Man, I love this brotherhood. On the road again, hitting up another hood. Up north, down south, Midwest, it don't matter, we gon' bring it out. Scriptures keep ringing out. We gon' speak it, we gon' rap it, even sing it out. Camp shirts blinging out. We gon' shine with these laws, what you be about?
All right, shalom, most high in Christ bless. We're back. Battled COVID a little bit.
Got through it.
Right. It's taking some time, you know, because the way it affects your lungs and everything. But we're back. And today, our topic is, yes, we were brought here on slave ships. So last week we were out at camp, and a brother said that, no, most of us were already here, so we just want to dispel that myth, because a lot of people do be saying that we were already here and we weren't brought over here on slave ships as slaves. So that's what we're jumping into today. We're going to open up with the book of Ezekiel, chapter 3 and verse 4.
The book of Ezekiel, chapter 3, verse 4. And he said unto me, Son of man, go, get thee into the house of Israel, and speak with my words unto them.
Right. So Israel was constantly in captivity. So we supposed to find out people and give them the word of the Lord. Now, give me Deuteronomy 28 and verse 48. So remember, keep in mind, everything that's prophesied must come to pass. Like Christ said, the scriptures cannot be broken. They cannot be broken. Go ahead, bro.
Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee.
Right. Our enemies came against us. Go ahead.
In hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things.
Come on.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck.
And they did that. They came. We were sold for different reasons, coming out of different places. Like in Africa, you had tribal wars, and our people got sold. You had, like, let's say somebody committed adultery, or fornication, to keep from putting you to death, they would sell you into slavery. So there's a lot of different things that happen, but we got sold into slavery. We had chains put on our necks. Go ahead.
Until he have destroyed thee.
So the people that put us in chains, they did destroy us. We forgot who we are. We discontinued from our heritage. Go ahead.
Verse 49.
Oh, you good. Now go to 68.
Verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
So you're going to go into bondage again on ships is what the prophecy is. Go ahead.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
So when we got here, we were sold to the so-called white man. You have, like, we're going to deal with our brothers in India that are called Siddhis. They were sold to East Indian people. But our people are everywhere in every land. Who are our enemies? It's everyone outside of our nation. We have been sold to all of them. Mainly the so-called white man. Go ahead.
For bondmen,
slave men,
and bond women,
slave women. Go ahead.
And no man shall buy you.
Right. No man is going to save you. No man is going to redeem you out of these captivities. Only the Lord himself is going to do that. So we're going to start out with our brothers in India called the Siddhis, Siddhis. So I'm going to put this map up that shows how we were taken from East Africa, the Horn of Africa, even Madagascar, Mozambique. Also, what it doesn't show on here, this particular one, is we were taken out of South Africa too. You had like the Hottentots, like Sarah Bartman, that was taken to Europe, and she had the big breasts and the big butt, and they put her on display. They're from down there. So our people scattered all throughout Africa, trying to flee from the so-called white man and our enemies. But they were taken from these places and shipped to India and other places over there. Now, so I'm going to show that so y'all can see it. And we're going to start with a book called The Black Holocaust for Beginners, to kind of to help us give the understanding that they were taking us from East Africa. So this book, The Black Holocaust for Beginners, what we're going to touch on right here is the Arabs, their part in putting us in slavery and sending us to India and other places. Just read that whole page, and then we're going to flip over.
All right, this is page 39. The Arab caravans of enslaved Africans grew. The Arabs would kill most of the adult men because they had resisted and would most likely continue to resist. Their deaths served to put fear in the hearts of the living. The slavers would take enough captives so that a good number would survive for selling. They were then divided into smaller, more manageable groups which set out on different routes back to the coast. The captives were forced marched all over the countryside as the Arab slavers gathered more captives. Young men, women, and children of all ages were bound by hand, either with hemp or leather, which grew tighter as time went on, and by neck yokes to each other, and forced to walk for hundreds of miles through dense forests, savannas, mountains, and waterways. If they got sick, they were left behind, often still bound or yoked to another stick or dead person. To make matters worse, they were constantly whipped, and all, men, women, and children, were treated as beasts of burden, carrying loads of ivory and other African treasures. In the 1200 years of Arab slavery, tens of millions of Africans died before they could even be sold. Page 40. In fact, Bagamoyo was one of the most important slave embarkment ports for those captives destined for Zanzibar, the Arab slave trade's key island over the 7 centuries, from 900 to the 1600s AD. Of the early Arab slave trade, hundreds of thousands of Africans died crossing the Indian Ocean between Tanganyika, Kenya, Zanzibar. Arab slave ships carried 200 to 400 captured Africans jammed together, either on an open deck or below the deck, with no regard for sex or age, for sanitation or food quality. The trip could take 1 day to reach Zanzibar, or it could take 2 weeks. Either way, there was not enough food and no health support. So the loss of African lives averaged about half of the original human cargo.
Okay, so you see, not, a lot of us, we're so angry with the so-called white man, but we don't realize what the Arab man and the other nations have done to us. So they put yokes of iron on our neck. We got other books about the atrocities that they did to our people. I got a book that tells you on those routes, let's say one of our sisters had a child. They were also forcing them to carry ivory, what they were selling. And if a woman that had a child got too tired to carry her child and the ivory, they would kill the child. She still had to carry that ivory. These people were they were very harsh and cruel with us, regardless of where we went, regardless of who our captives are. But over here in the U.S., it's the so-called white man. We know the history of the things that they've done to us. Now, next. So the Arabs carried our people over to India and other places. So now I'm going to play this clip. There's a guy he goes by, his YouTube channel is called The Visual Poet. And he goes around in Arab countries and other places looking for, what he thinks is Africans. So he's actually finding our brothers and sisters. So I'm going to play this and so y'all can see what he's come across. So he's come across our people, and they're known as Siddis. Siddis. Let me get to it. Wasn't able to download the video for some reason, even though it's mine, I created. That's crazy. Come on now. All right, let's see. Okay. Listen carefully. So this is actually 3 clips put together.
Long back, they came to India, like our ancestors. They came on 16th centuries as a British slaves. The British brought us as like slaves. Since that time, we are suffering because those times the kings they have lots of problems, wars, killing, and this generation, religion matter. Actually, our grand ancestors they used to tell Africa is our motherland, but we never went to Africa. But by the stories we know about Africa, because they used to tell, and our grand ancestors they don't want to recognize that sin when they came from Africa to India, that how they suffered. That's very bad. Sometimes my grandfather used to tell us story, because the white people, they brought them as slaves. They used to beat them like they have struggled lot, means lot. Yes, they don't want to remember about Africa.
Is the black people, black African people here called the Siddhis, and the Siddhis are divided in three religions, mainly Christians, Islamics and Hindus. Actually, I belongs to Hindu community. Yeah. So far as Siddhi settlement in India is concerned, the history says so many things. Actually, even today, which is true, we all don't know, because history says Portuguese brought us to India from Africa as a slaves, and some other authors, they says Arab merchants, they brought Siddhis to India, and some other sources say British brought Siddhis to India to work. So, and some other source also says the Arab kings, they brought Siddhis as a bodyguards to India. So ultimately we are all confused. We don't know exactly which part of Africa we have come to India. We don't know nothing, and we have no much contact with the African countries.
Oh boy, so what they're all saying is true. So I got this book here. It's called The Portuguese in West Africa from 1415 to 1617. So what he's saying is true. The Portuguese took them and carried them to India. The Arabs, like we read in the Black Holocaust, they took them and carried them to India and other places. The Spaniards did it, and the Englishmen did it. They all played a part in it. So what they're saying is true. Just like us over here, they were carried to India and other places on that side of the world on slave ships. 100%. So now we're going to go to this brother here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Well, Oluwado Ekweno. I'm going to attempt to do it. I don't know how accurate that is. We're going to be reading out here, and he's going to give his account. He's a famous, you'll see. So, but he's famous. He was brought to Virginia and made a slave. But he ended up getting his freedom. He ended up over in United Kingdom. He became a Christian. And one of the profound things he said was, nobody wanted to be as righteous as him. They didn't, because they don't keep commandments. He grew up keeping feast days and all that stuff. He talks about it in his book. So we're going to go to some things that he said that is written about him. Okay.
All right, this is page 26. The first object which saluted my eyes when I arrived on the coast was the sea and a slave ship, which was then riding at anchor and waiting for its cargo. Just jumping down. When I looked round the ship, too, and saw a large furnace or copper boiling, and a multitude of black people of every description chained together, every one of their countenances expressing dejection and sorrow. I no longer doubted of my fate, and quite overpowered with horror and anguish, I fell motionless on the deck and fainted. This is page 28. At last, when the ship we were in had got all her cargo, they made ready with many fearful noises, and we were all put under deck, so that we could not see how they managed the vessel. But this disappointment was the least of my sorrow. The stench of the hold while we were on the coast was so intolerable loathsome that it was dangerous to remain there for any time, and some of us had been permitted to stay on the deck for the fresh air. But now that the whole ship's cargo were confined together, it became absolutely pestilential. The closeness of the place and the heat of the climate added to the number in the ship, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocated us. This produced copious perspirations, so that the air soon became unfit for respiration, from a variety of loathsome smells, and brought on a sickness among the slaves, of which many died. Page 29. At last, we came in sight of the island of Barbados, at which the whites on board gave a great shout and made many signs of joy to us.
Yeah, so we see his account. He was marched halfway across Africa till they got to the coast and was put on slave ships with other, quote unquote African people. These were Israelites. So there's no doubt. Also, he mentioned about the pestilence and how they were packed in close together and all that. Man, he's not the only one to talk about that stench that was there, that pestilence. That means people were getting sick. We've been through a lot, brothers and sisters. And for somebody to say that this didn't happen, we didn't come over here on ships, it's absolutely ridiculous. There's too many accounts. Also, I'm gonna tell y'all something else. You can Google it. They have found slave ships off the coast of South Africa. You even had pirates that were attacking these ships, because you had merchants coming out of, and I'm gonna put the map up in a minute. It was a triangular slave trade. So they would leave Europe with money, come down to Africa, buy slaves. They gave them rum, guns, other kinds of stuff. Then they take slaves and they go right to the Caribbean. When you look at, I'm gonna put this up too in a minute, about you have a natural current that goes from the western banks of Africa right over to the Caribbean. Naturally. Also, I'm gonna show this too. Storms take that same route. They start over in Atlantic, off the coast of West Africa, and go right over to the Caribbean, and then they can go north to North America. They can go right across the Caribbean or come back down. So anyway, that's his account. They were on slave ships. We intentionally went to that last part to show they landed in the island of Barbados, which is in the Caribbean. Now, we're going to go to the Amistad Rebellion. I know a lot of you have seen the movie La Amistad. We're just going to hit, we're going to go to a map in here, and then we're going to hit just a little piece of the story in here to give you some understanding. So, the Amistad Rebellion. All right.
This is page 19. The enslavement of Mindi, Gabandi, Timni, Kono, and others inland from the Galanas coast of West Africa. Their transportation across the Atlantic abroad, the Portuguese or Brazilian slave ship Ticora, their landing in Havana, Cuba, and their reshipment aboard the Amistad for Puerto Príncipe.
Okay, so I don't know if any of you have seen the movie La Amistad. These brothers and sisters were taken from Sierra Leone. It's known as Sierra Leone today. And there was, I might put this in there. So there were two famous people that were involved with that slavery right there. You had a African king named King Siaka, and he was selling slaves to Pedro Blanco. You can look these men up. You can find them on Wiki. This stuff is not a lie. Right, you can go to Wiki and you can find them. It was they took these captives out of Sierra Leone. They went to Cuba first on one ship. Then they would put on another ship, and they took that ship over and ended up going somewhere like near Boston. They were trying to find their way home and they couldn't. Like when we read out of the other book, they had the captives down below, and when they were steering the ship, they wouldn't let them come up there so they could see how to steer the ship. You got to pay attention to things like that. So, but anyway, they took over. There's a movie about it, a big story about it, and everything. It's 100% fact. So now, next, I'm going to post this picture where that shows the tracks of these storms, these hurricanes, tropical storms, how they come out of the Atlantic Ocean near the western banks of Africa, and they go over to the Caribbean, and they work their way up. Amazing. When you look at this, you can see that the Most High orchestrated the whole thing. We escape now from here, go over to the western banks of Africa. We'll run out of Europe back into Africa, and then we get taken and put on slave ships and brought on this side of the earth. Incredible. But, and you got some people saying, no, we didn't come over here on ships. Then I'm going to post this other one that shows the triangular slave trade. And not only that, but we were also taken not just to the other side of the world by the Arabs and the Englishmen, but they also took us back to Europe, Spain, Portugal, those places, made us slaves over there too. The principal traders in our slave trade has been the so-called white man, the ringleader. All right, so now we're going to go to this book here called The History and Geography, A Voyage to the Islands of Madeira, Barbados, Nevis. It's a long title. But what it is was written in 1707, and the guy is documenting things that he saw while he was Hans Sloane. I believe he was a botanist, and he was going studying the plants and stuff there, but he was giving accounts of things that he saw. So we're going to jump to this book next. Just to reiterate, we were brought over here on slave ships. You can do it. Okay, y'all. So we're in the book about the voyage to the islands. In the introduction, looks like page 13. And we're going to pick up right there where it says, when a Guinea. So when a Guinea ship comes near Jamaica with blacks to sell, there is great care taken that the Negroes should be shaved. I can't make out what that is. And their bodies and hair anointed all over with palm oil, which adds a great beauty to them. The planters choose their Negroes by the country whence they come from and their look. So we had different characteristics, and these slave owners, they wanted specific things. Because I've heard brothers say, yeah, they didn't ask you what tribe you was from when you got off them ships. No, these people like certain things in particular. You ended up where you were supposed to be. The Lord is in control of all things. Now, the blacks from the East Indians are fed on flesh and fish at home, and therefore are not coveted because troublesome because troublesome to nourish. And those from Angola run away from their masters, and fancy on their deaths they are going home again, which is no lucretious experiment, for in hard usage they kill themselves. So the main point here is I'm showing Guinea. Guinea is West Africa. They were put on ships taken from Guinea, and they were brought to the Caribbean. These were brought to Jamaica. All right, so we're back to the introduction. That is, I don't know what that is. I got time for them numbers. All right, so we're going to pick up right here. We're just reiterating our point. I saw in this harbor and bay a ship come from Guinea, which is West Africa, loaded with blacks to sail. The ship was very nasty. We read about that. Brother Equiano said that. The ship was very nasty with so many people on board. I was assured that the Negroes feed on pindles or Indian earth nuts, a sort of pea or bean producing its pods underground, coming from Guinea hither. They are fed on these nuts, and I don't know what, I can't make that out right there. Corn boiled whole twice a day, at 8 o'clock and 4 in the afternoon, each having a pint of water allowed him. The Negroes from Angola and Gambia is Senegambia today, are not troubled with worms, but those from the Gold Coast very much, which the Gold Coast is Ghana. That's going to do it for this book. Okay, so our people were brought from West Africa, taken to the Caribbean and sold. But I'm going to bring out something real quick because we got a little bit of time. So give me Joel chapter 3 and verse 3, man. Let me bring this out real quick.
All right. The book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot.
Stop right there. So they've cast lots for my people. So they did that even when we got here. You see that in the movie Amistad, where they put us on auction blocks. They have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for an harlot. So I want y'all to think about this. So, like you read about, they would take with the Mandingos and have them mate with the women and try to make big and strong slaves. Also, what they would do, they would take a young man. This is all about this right here. Have given a boy for an harlot. They would take a young man and make him lay with his mother. That's where the term M-effer comes from them doing that to our people. It's like these people have no shame. The things they've done to us, they have no shame. And for some reason, they think that the Lord is going to forget about it and allow them to rule in his kingdom. But the scriptures say the righteous shall scarcely be saved. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. Salvation is for us. It's us being saved from our enemies, people that have done these things to us. Finish that verse out.
And sold a girl for wine, that they might drink.
Right. You look at, I didn't touch this with the Arab slavery, but in the Arab slavery, it was 2-to-1. They were taking females. They would make us eunuchs and would make them their sex slaves. So They would make our men eunuchs and then make them serve in their armies. That's why at the beginning you see the Seedy brother, he's saying that Arab kings had brought bodyguards. They were castrated and they fought in their armies and stuff, man. This stuff, research history. Man. All right, so we just sidetracked that right there. Now we're going to get back to the regularly scheduled program. Just a little side note. So now we're going to this book called The Myth of the Negro Past. This brother, if I'm not mistaken, I might be mistaken, y'all, but I think he was a Haitian who worked his way up and he ended up going to college and being a scholar. But we're going into this book and we're going to places, documented places where they took our people out of Africa.
This is page 40. The markets most frequented by the English and American separate traders lay on the great middle stretches of the coast, Sierra Leone, the grain coast, Liberia, the ivory, gold, and slave coast, the oil rivers as the Niger Delta, as then called Cameroon, Gabon, and Luango. This is page 42. The slaves brought to America came almost exclusively from the West Coast. The English brought captives from the Senegal and Gambia rivers, from the Gold Coast, Slave Coast, and even as far as south as Angola. The Dutch had forts on the Gold Coast and in 1640 captured the Portuguese forts at Angola, where they gathered many slaves. The French had Fort Louis at the mouth of the Senegal River, and other forts scattered down the west coast. Anthony Benezet, who made a careful study of the slave trade, said that the slaves were regularly shipped from all points from the Senegal to Angola, a coast of nearly 4,000 miles. The heart of the trade was the Slave Coast and the Gold Coast, and behind this a territory extending into the interior for 700 miles or more. From this territory, Senegalese Negroes, Mandingos, Igbos, Efiks, Ebonis, Caramantes, Waidas, Jolloffs, Fuis, together with representatives of many of the interior Bantus, were brought to America. All right, this is page 50. The Ashanti Infanti of the Gold Coast, the former most frequently termed Coromantese, after a place named their homeland, and mentioned most often by those who wrote of the British possessions, continental as well as insular. The Dahomean and allied peoples, at times called Waidas, after the major seacoast town of Dahomey or Pawpaws from Popo, a town not far to the west, are especially prominent in the French writings. The French planters had little liking for the Gold Coast slaves, and these scarcely figure in Moraru de Saint Mary, listing of tribes represented in Haiti. In similar manner, the Dahomeans, who were the favorited slaves of the French, were not fancied by the English, as it is to be seen when we contrast the 14,312 Gold Coast Negroes in our list of Jamaica imports with the 3,912 from Dahomey. Another type of slave frequently mentioned is the Nego. This term is used for the Yoruba of western Nigeria, whose language is called by that name. Historical records for those parts of Latin America where present-day Negro customs have been studied, Cuba and Brazil, are not available. In the case of the latter, they were burned to wipe out every trace of slavery when the Negroes were emancipated in that country. And if they exist for Cuba, they have not been published. But such data, as we have established, that the Nego slaves were favorites of the Spanish and Portuguese planters, from which it follows that it is logical to find European customs preponderant in the African survivals reported from these countries. For the rest of the slaving era, evidences of Africanisms are fragmentary. The Mandingo, Singalese, and Hausa of the sub-desert area to the north have left traces of their presence, principally in Brazil. The vast masses of Congo slaves that we know were imported have made their influence felt disproportionately little, though a few tribal names, a few tribal deities have linguistic survivals, and more often the word Congo itself are encountered.
All right, y'all. So we just read a lot of places that our people were from, and I'm just going to touch on some of it. So the same people that were carrying the CDs over to India, other side of the world, these same players, your Portuguese, your Spaniards, your Englishmen, they all had their hands, okay, here even the French. Matter of fact, there are other accounts too. Even the Germans were in South America. So I'm just going to point some out real quick. That second page where the brother was reading, it talked about Angola. It said the Dutch had forts on the Gold Coast. All of them had their hands in the slave trade and enslaving us. But the Portuguese, it says they had forts in Angola. So over time, the Spaniards took those over, and it tells you that. They had some type of war or something go on. I can't remember the exact story. But what the Portuguese did, they were taking our people from Angola, which is West Africa, but it's after the curve and you start going down. So remember he was saying it was like a 4,000 mile stretch of land where they were getting us from. They took the most slaves and they carried them to what's known today as Brazil. The Portuguese did that. You can tell who did what by the language. So in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. Most of the other Central and South American countries, they speak Spanish. The Spaniards did that. Then North America, they speak in English. Also, like it was saying, the French, the Haitians, they had the French. Everybody was doing what they were supposed to do. Everything, like I was saying, everything is of the Most High. So you have the Brazilians. They were enslaved by the Portuguese. They speak Portuguese down there. It was naming some of the places where they took us from. Senegalese Negroes, Mandingos, Igbos. So most of us in North America, I think 65%, it's in the high 60s, we're Igbos. We come from Nigeria. That's the majority of us that are in North America, are Igbos. Then it names Huedas. That's important. I saw a brother do. He had a book. I can't remember what the name of the book is, but he was showing. Because like this book I got right here about the Portuguese in West Africa. I haven't finished reading through it, but the Portuguese were the first to invade Wada, and they didn't call it Wada. They called it Judah. Then it was renamed to Ajuda. Then after that to Wada. They knew they were getting Jews out of these places. Like on our map right here, you've seen it on other videos. They documented everywhere that they came across Negroes that were keeping the customs of Jews. That doesn't even include our people that's discontinued and not doing that anymore. So, that's it for the myth of the Negro past. Just continually, we have a lot of stuff that we're not even going to touch, shows that we were brought from Africa, Europe, Spain, Portugal, and brought over here and made to be slaves. Matter of fact, there's a book that's out on loan called Before the Mayflower. And then Before the Mayflower, it tells you that the first slaves brought over here had Spanish names. They were from Spain and Portugal. We've done other classes. If you didn't accept white man Christianity, they would make you slaves. So, matter of fact, I think we're going to go to a book that I hadn't planned on going to. So, I'm going to get that and show it to you. Okay, y'all. I very seldom use this book because it's in such bad condition. This is It's the second edition, American Negro Slavery, a modern reader, edited by Alan Weinstein and Frank Otto Gattel. So I wasn't able to find the first edition, but even they make a third edition, which they have taken out what I'm about to read. So this is page 24. And pay close attention to what is being said here. It says that this provenance played an important role in shaping views about the Negroes as suggested by the first recorded plea by an Englishman on the North American continent for the establishment of an African slave trade. So they were already trading us. They've been trading us since the 1400s. They were selling us. Now, this is what was written. It says, if a just war with the Narragansett Indians, the Lord should deliver them into our hands. We might easily have men, women, and children enough to exchange for Moors. So they knew that they were going to win the war against the Indians. You know why? Because the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. Devils. So they're talking about exchanging for Moors. So another thing we keep telling y'all, the Moors were our people. The Jews and Moors of Spain and Portugal were our people. They were sold into slavery, which will be more gainful pillage for us than we conceive. For I do not see how we can thrive until we get into a stock of slaves sufficient to do all our business. For our children's children will hardly see this great continent filled with people, so that our servants will still desire freedom to plant for themselves and not stay, but for very great wages. Yeah, you know that. They want that money. I suppose you know very well. Bear with me because this book's torn apart. Page 25. How we shall maintain 20 Moors. What's they ain't calling us Negroes? Calling us Moors. Cheaper than one English servant. You look at it today, most of our people They get minimum wage. How many salaries does it take of our people to equal one corporate CEO salary? All right. I'm going to pick up here in 1644. Well, no, I'm going to start where I began to highlight. It says, but a fairly clear linkage between crime and captivity seems to have existed in the minds of New Englanders concerning Indian slavery. What do you think? When you oppress and enslave a people, they still need the things that they need, man. What is wrong with these people? It's like they thought that something was wrong with you if you tried to escape slavery. Are you kidding me? In 1644, the commissioners of the United Colonies, meeting at New Haven, decided in light of the Indians' proud affronts, hostile practices, and percentage of rescuinage of offenders, that magistrates might send some convenient strength of English and seize and bring away Indians from any plantation of Indians, which persisted in this practice, and if no satisfaction was forthcoming, could deliver the Indians ceased, either to serve or be shipped out. See that? Shipped out and exchanged for Negroes. Captivity and criminal justice seem to mean the same thing, slavery. So native Indians were shipped across the Atlantic over to United Kingdom, Great Britain, England. That happened. That's documented. Matter of fact, the first person to do it was your boy Columbus. All right. So that's it out of this book. I rarely use it because it's in such bad shape. All right. So many of you know, but a lot of you might not know. We're based out of Richmond, Virginia. So our ancestors came in, came up the James River, and we were sold in what is known as Shockoe Bottom. We have a video. It's on my YouTube channel about the slave trail. We document where we came, got off the ships, and we would have to walk down and then cross over into downtown to the places where they were selling us. You know, like Lumpkin's Jail, and then you had these, I forget what kind of houses they called them, but where they did their trading, and they would, buy and sell our brothers and sisters, our forefathers, for slaves. Right downtown. Matter of fact, there's a Buffalo Wild Wings down in Shockoe Bottom. Right by the front door on the sidewalk, there's a big plaque. It's part of the slave trail. They were selling us, auctioning us off right there. So a few years back, I bought this book by James Lowen. It's called Lies Across America. And I learned something in this book that I never knew. Matter of fact, for those of you, if you know the city, whether you live here or not, when you're on Interstate 95 and you cross Broad Street, that is where Lumpkin's Jail was. That's where it used to be. Matter of fact, they still have the remnant of that building, and it's over there. They got everything set up over there, too. They opened it up a few years ago, documenting that history. Matter of fact, the slave trail, for many years, I used to fish over there. And I remember when they came and they started putting all that stuff. It's like, what they doing, man? They bothering me at my spot, man. I'm out here trying to catch catfish.
Oh, man.
All praise to the Most High, I didn't eat them. I was like catching them. So I remember when they were putting them up, and I was watching them when they walked off. I walked up the hill and was like, what is this? And they had like the slave revolt, that was in New Orleans. And then I was reading on there, and they were saying that they had heard about what happened with the Amistad. It's crazy, man. But when I found out the truth, I was like, damn. All this time I was coming down here, I didn't know it was a slave trail. But anyway, that started my journey in learning all these different things. So we're going to go into this book. We're just going to read a little bit of it. It's the last thing we're going into. So let's get into it. Yeah.
All right, this is page 282. Chapter 62, Slavery and Redemption, Virginia, Richmond. Richmond was one of the great centers of the slave trade, but today the city contains not one historical marker or site alluding to the buying and selling of human beings. Of course, the slave trade is not a happy topic for a feel-good historical markers. Not all accounts of the trade tell the unrelieved suffering. However, some incidents show the potential for growth, even redemption. If you stand today where Broad Street passes over Interstate 95, formerly 15th Street, you are in the heart of Richmond's famous slave market. Until April 3rd, 1865, local African Americans called the area the Devil's Half Acre. One reason was Robert Lumpkin's prosperous slave trading business located on Lumpkin Alley, which intersected Broad opposite 15th Street coming in from the north. Today, Lumpkin Alley is the parking and industrial area visible below Broad Street.
All right, so I just got to make a couple comments. So if you're like near Shockoe Bottom, Lumpkin's jail would be right beside Main Street Station. Mm-hmm. Not at the entrance, but towards the back, like where the parking lot is. You can go over there. They got what's remains of Lumpkin's jail there. Then you got in front of Main Street Station on, Main Street. So you had those houses where they auctioned us off all through that street right there. Our people don't even realize it. They go down there partying, drinking, and carrying on. That's where they were selling us at. And now we're going down there partying, man. You just cannot make this stuff up. Our people don't really realize we're in the land of our captivity, man. This ain't our rest. We were brought here to serve our punishment. But anyway, so you got Main Street Station. Everything's going on right there. They have Lumpkin's jail, what remains of it. Now here's another ironic story. So this double, Robert Lumpkin, I think he bought one of our sisters and he married her. When he died, all of his stuff belonged to her. Oh my goodness. So this Edomite pastor, this Caucasian from up north, he comes down, he buys Lumpkin's jail from her. Over the years, that became what today is called Virginia Union University, which is a seminary school where they teach lies, where they teach Christianity. You cannot make this stuff up. You just cannot make this stuff up. So what we've done, we've given you detail. They took us from Africa and other places, carried us all throughout the planet. They carried us to the Far East, and they brought us over here to the West. So we started over there, came all the way up to them selling us on auction blocks over here. So let it be no doubt in your mind. Yes, we were brought over here on ships and made to be slaves. Give me Luke 21 and verse 24. Let's go to Christ. Let's go to the Master.
The book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword.
Talking about our people. We fell by the edge of the sword in 70 AD. We fell by the sword many times, repeatedly. The curses happened repeatedly. We fell by the edge of the sword. Come on.
And shall be led away captive into all nations.
Right. We were led away captive into all nations. That happened to us. It's documented. Even in India, it was the story of the Arabs. They put yokes around our necks, marched us to the coast and put us on ships, carried us to Zanzibar, carried us to India, Cochin, India, all these different places. Go ahead.
And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
Right. So in our land, you have Gentiles. Matter of fact, you got Gentiles fighting Gentiles over the land. We're in captivity. The Lord has not come and redeemed us out of our captivity yet. So those people over there are heathens. Once the Lord comes back and get us, we're going over there and we're going to be at peace in the land. You read that in the scriptures. When we're put back on our land, there's going to be peace. There's nothing but conflict and war over there. All praises to the Most High. They need to feel it. We've been feeling it. We've been in tribulation since 70 AD. Was that it, bro?
Yeah. That was
All right.
24.
The book of Acts, chapter 5, and verse 29.
The book of Acts, chapter 5, and verse 29.
Read.
Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men.
Right, so that's what we got to do. Not follow after the silly ideologies and the wine and doctrine of men. So, biblical histories and sources. Israelite Saints of Christ. I'm Brother Jacob.
Brother Jeremiah.
And behind the camera.
Brother Sirach.
And with that, y'all, we say
Shalom.
Shalom.